Alright, so in my hand, I'm holding an original Marshall Bluesbreaker. Now, if you know anything about these pedals, you'll know that the original ones are quite hard to find these days. You can get them on the second-hand market, but they are fetching some pretty big prices these days. Now, this is one of my most treasured possessions. I have had this for maybe 7 or 8 years now. I can't remember exactly when I bought this, but I bought this off a friend of mine right before the big spike in the market. Now, I always wanted one of these, but obviously after Marshall discontinued them, they became very, very rare. By the time I actively started looking for one, the prices were slowly getting higher, but they weren't at the crazy levels they are now. So I did get this for a good price. But as such, because it's so rare and, you know, it's worth quite a lot of money, I don't like taking this out of the house. But the Bluesbreaker tone is something that I really, really like. And for many years, I've been trying to find the perfect variation on this to actually be able to take this sound on tour with me without needing to worry about this particular pedal. And now I've found that. Thanks to the guys at Origin Effects, they have now come out with something that gives you those classic Bluesbreaker tones, and that is the Halcyon Blue Overdrive. So the Origin Effects Halcyon Blue Overdrive is Origin's take on the classic Bluesbreaker sound. Now the Halcyon series is a really cool series. They've taken 3 classic pedals. You've got the Halcyon Blue, which is the Bluesbreaker, the Halcyon Green, which is the Tube Screamer, and the Halcyon Gold, which is the Klon. And what they've done is they've taken these classic pedals, put them into Origin's typically bomb-proof enclosures, because honestly I've been gigging with the Halcyon Gold for a while and it's unbreakable. These units are rock solid, they're quite heavy, and they're definitely made for the road. And what they've done with all of the Halcyon range is they've taken the classic sounds, like the Bluesbreaker, and added a little bit of a twist. So this can give you all of those classic Bluesbreaker tones and more. And in this video, we're going to check that out. First of all, big thank you to the guys at Origin Effects for sending me this pedal to check out. I'm not getting paid for the video, but the guys have provided me with this pedal. The Halcyon Blue is really easy to dial in a great tone with. So we've got a level and a gain control and a tone control like the original Bluesbreaker would have. But then we have this dry control. So in this position, the pedal does not let any dry signal pass through, so it's entirely the sound of the pedal. As we increase this control, what we're doing is we're blending in a dry signal. So that's really useful if you're stacking this with another overdrive. You can blend in part of that overdrive signal, or if you're using an overdriven amp, you can actually pass some of your guitar's clean tone through the pedal to blend with the overdrive of the amp with the pedal as well. So that's a really useful tone shaping feature. Then we have these 2 little toggle switches here. The top switch is a 3-position switch for the adapt circuitry. This is a really cool feature that allows you to maintain a really clean guitar sound as you roll it back, but without sacrificing any frequencies. So in the off position, it just functions like a Bluesbreaker would when you roll the tone back. And you've got Adapt 1 and Adapt 2, which are increased levels of this adaptive circuitry. So 2 being the most adaptive, so when you roll the guitar control down, you don't get that mid-range hump you get from a Bluesbreaker. You get a much more sparkly, full frequency clean tone. So that's a really useful feature as well. And then underneath that, we've got another little toggle switch, which is the mode switch. This has the regular Bluesbreaker and a mod side. The mod side is a bit more gain, a bit more output, so it's like a Bluesbreaker on steroids. So I'm going to plug this in now so we can hear some sounds. So the guitar I'm using in this video is my Shergold Guitars Telstar. This is plugged into the Blackstar HT20mkIII, which is currently running on the clean channel, but we'll use the overdrive later on in the video, and that's going via the 2-notes Torpedo Captor X. So first of all, I'm running the amp clean, which sounds like this. Before I let you hear this thing, I do have a very small request, and that is if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do that. There's a big red button right below. Please hit that button. It really helps me, and it helps me to keep growing the channel. I can see from my YouTube analytics that 96% of the people who regularly watch my content are not actually subscribed. So please subscribe. It helps me to keep growing the channel and making videos that you are going to enjoy. So yeah, please scroll down, hit that button, and now we can hear some sounds. So I'm going to start with some classic Bluesbreaker tones. Everything on the Halcyon Blue is at midnight. The adapt switch is off and the voice switch is in the BB position, which is the Bluesbreaker sound. You'll notice I've got the dry control at halfway, and there's a reason for that. The original Bluesbreakers are a soft clipping overdrive, and they actually have a little bit of dry signal pass through, which is one of the reasons they're so great for pushing amps, because you actually retain a lot of the amp's character as well. So what I'm going to do here is play with this in this position to actually emulate the little bit of dry pass through that you do get from the original Bluesbreaker as well. So you'll notice I boosted the volume a little bit there because actually the pedal is a little bit quieter than what my clean tone is. So I have put that volume up slightly. That tone control is quite wide ranging because as I increased that, it did get quite bright. And actually quite a lot louder as well. So it actually boosts as well as kind of adds top end. I actually quite like it about there. With the tone control in that position, you do get that nice warm amp-like sound. And the dry switch is interesting because you can actually hear a little bit of that clarity from the clean tone. Even though you can't hear all the clean tone, it just adds a little bit of sparkle to the chords. Whereas if we have this up full, it's going to sound slightly different. Now, when I say full, I mean full mix with the pedal. Even though that looks like I've got that control set to 0, this is actually full mix for the pedal, and then this would be full dry. So if I do this, We're actually hearing a lot more of the dry signal from the amp there rather than the pedal. But having that at the halfway point best simulates the Bluesbreaker. So now everything's back at midnight, except for the volume, but I'm going to move the voice switch to the mod position. What this is going to do is introduce a different clipping characteristic. So we're going to have more gain, it's going to be a bit fatter sounding and a bit warmer, but also it's going to be boosted. So I'm actually going to bring the volume back a little bit now to compensate, because this side is actually quite a bit louder. So now we're going to talk about the adapt switch. So I've put the gain on full and I've made the pedal completely wet. So I've removed all the dry signal and it sounds like this. Now the adapt switch actually doesn't do anything at all when your guitar volume is full. The point of this is when you roll the guitar down and how the guitar interacts with the pedal. So with this in the off position, what a Bluesbreaker does when you roll the guitar down is actually gives you a big honky mid-range. Now, the job of the adapt switch is to remove that honky mid-range and introduce a full frequency cleaner sound. So there's two positions to this. You've got adapt 1, which is fully over to the right. This gives you slightly less mid-range and a little bit more of a full frequency sound. And then adapt 2, which goes even further with that mid bump, pulls that out even more, brings the lows and highs up to match, so we get a much flatter sound. You can hear that's much flatter sounding. Now, my guitar is about halfway there. When it's on full, the switch doesn't really do a lot. It adds a little bit of top-end presence to my ears, but it's not really changing the tone that much. But where it really makes a difference is when we roll down. So when I'm on about halfway, so that's a really useful feature, because if you're playing with the guitar's volume control, you can actually get a little bit more of your natural guitar sound, especially if you're blending this with an amp tone. That's incredibly useful, I think. So now I've switched the Blackstar HT20mkIII over to the Overdrive channel, which sounds like this. So we've got a nice crunchy gain sound there. What I'm going to do in this part now is show you how the dry control works with an overdriven amp. And this is a really cool way to stack gains and get different sounds. So when it's in this position, so we're introducing no dry signal at all, when I turn the pedal on, I'm going to bring the gain back a bit, what I'm doing now is taking my guitar into the overdrive pedal, overdriving the clean guitar sound, and then taking that overdriven sound into the amp, which will sound like this. that's a pretty typical way of stacking gains. We tend to just put one gain on top of another. This is the same principle if you're stacking different drive pedals. But what I can do is I can use this control to blend those two sounds together. So if I bring that up to the halfway point, which simulates what the original Bluesbreaker does, we're getting a little bit of the amp signal and a bit of the pedal signal together. And if I go all the way with this, we're using more of the dry signal than we are the pedal signal. So that feature actually opens a lot of doors for some really cool experimentation as well. You could put something like a high gain overdrive or a fuzz in front of the Halcyon Blue and blend a little bit of that signal in. Rather than stacking the two one after the other, you can actually get this nice hybrid of the two sounds. I think that's a very useful sound for both studio and live use. For me, this is a pedal that actually solves a problem that I've had for many years, which is not being able to take my Bluesbreaker on the road with me because of its age and fragility and whatnot. The fact I can now have what is essentially a bomb-proof Bluesbreaker on my pedal board is a big result. So this is actually going straight on my touring board, and I'll be putting some miles on this pedal very, very shortly. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this thing down below in the comments. There's some links in the description where you can check out the Halcyon Blue for yourself. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this, what you think of the sounds you've heard in this video, and if you've tried one of these yourself, I'd love to hear your experience as well. Let me know what you think. While you're doing that, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for watching as always.